Hello, 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 everyone. Another week, another episode of the Reinvention Show. Another chance for us to come together and think how can we not just survive, but thrive in today's uncertain and volatile world. That is what the show is all about. It's about figuring out the new rules of the game. It's very clear that the rules, frameworks, theories, and approaches that worked for a relatively stable and not so volatile world, rather certain and predictable world, those rules are no longer working. But the new rules are not yet super clear. So here we come together every week on Thursday at 11 a.m. US Eastern to explore the new approaches, the new solutions, the new ways forward to survive and thrive in uncertainty and volatility. I'm super excited to have you here with me across all platforms. We're streaming live on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Facebook. And let me know in the comments where you're joining me from. I already see that Germany is in the house. Michael, super happy to see you here. Michael, of course, is member of our professional community of reinventors called Stellar Reinvention Club. Super excited to have you today at the show. But let me know in the comments where you're joining me from. We have Brazil here as well. As always, our global reinvention community is very, very diverse. I see Virginia, I see Canada, I see Copenhagen, I see Belarus. Welcome, 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 everyone. We are excited to have you here. And we're excited to talk today about reinvention as a profession. Reinvention as a profession. What does it look like? What is happening in the world? I'm happy to see that Miguel is here from Portugal. Hi, hi, hi. Super happy to see some of the regulars. And those of you who are joining me for the first time, give me a plus in the comments. If this is your first Reinvention show, and perhaps even the very first introduction to reinvention, give me a sign in the comment, a plus, an emoji. I want to welcome you specifically and more highlight my welcome to you as I'm excited that you are joining me as well. So, reinvention as a profession. Many of you probably have already seen the posts that we share or going around reinvention being the new game in town. Recently, Forbes magazine, without any reference or without any preparation for us, they are writing about us, but we didn't know they would write about us. Forbes recently spoke about how reinvention and not change management is a new game in town. I don't think there's a war between two approaches. It's actually a bridge, a partnership, and very, very important collaboration between these two streams of intellectual work. And addition to that, strategy, innovation, design thinking, Scrum, Agile. There's so many more different areas that we are bridging with the field of reinvention. But recently, we've been in Forbes that announced that reinvention is the new game in town. We've seen the CEO of Netflix publishing a book where he chose the word reinvention very deliberately, not innovation or something else, when he titled the book Netflix and the Culture of Reinvention. We've seen states such as the state of North Dakota here in the US announce their first chief reinvention officer. And we, of course, seen corporations. For example, one of the largest producer of electrical equipment in the world, Iskra, has its first chief reinvention officer. So clearly something is going on. There's the new profession in town, not to say the amazing community of consultants, trainers, and coaches who are now specializing specifically in reinvention, many of them using our own reinvention method. So what's going on? What is this? What is this murmur? What is this thing happening? What is the reinvention as a profession? To answer that question, first, let's understand the context. What's going on in the world? So I have my markers with me. Today will be very much about drawing and explanation. It will be a little bit more informative comparing to some of the amazing CEO interviews that I've done in the past or author interviews. Today is very much heavy on the data. So what is reinvention as a profession and why is it emerging as the hot new profession in town? To understand that, we need to go back to the discussion of life cycles. How life cycles of business models, products, careers are shortening radically. And because of that, the only way to survive and thrive is to reinvent. You remember, the research is very, very clear that if we look at a life cycle, in most cases, we're talking about life cycle of a business model. And if we look at a typical life cycle of a business model, the ability of a company to generate value from the beginning of the business model to the growth, to the cash cow years, and then to the decline towards bankruptcy or acquisition. The typical life cycle of business in most of the 20th century was 75 years. That means the company could go for decades without any significant reinvention. They just concentrated on small incremental efficiencies of doing the same thing, same standard operating procedures, same products, same markets, just slightly better. And in that context, the job of reinvention was unnecessary. If you reinvent barely once every 40 years, why in the heck would you have an internal competence in reinvention? Why would you have your own professional reinventor in the house, a chief reinvention officer, chief transformation officer, chief growth officer? Why would you need that? You wouldn't, because you don't change for decades. But then you remember, our research shows that in the late 1980s, early 1990s, the life cycle of the company suddenly shrunk because of globalization, because of technology, and the beginning of the exponential age. We went from 75 to 15, and suddenly we have very few years to reinvent. And that was not all. We then go to the current data, and the current data, 2020 data, says that the average life cycle for the business model today across all industry, the median across all industry, is only 6. Now we're in a whole new ballgame. Now reinventing is more or less a daily job. And if we look at the 9 types of reinvention, those of you who are using the Chief Reinvention Officer Handbook, you know that 9 types of reinvention can be found on the Reinvention Portfolio Canvas. This is the page 181. Now that we're talking about 9 different types of reinvention, having a portfolio of initiatives and dealing with speed, suddenly you cannot outsource it. You cannot hope that reinvention will happen magically on its own. The speed of reinvention required, plus the intensity and the scope of reinvention required, means that we need to bring this competence in-house or have a significant partner in the form of a consultant, an outsourced firm that is continuously working with you to help you reinvent. And suddenly, reinvention became a profession. Suddenly, it became a profession that is heavily in demand in the corporate world and in the startup world and small and medium-sized businesses. And we also have a growing number of reinvention professionals focusing on nonprofit sector, including educational institution, nonprofit philanthropic organizations, community organizations, and of course, churches. So this is the context. Why reinvention is becoming such a hot profession? Because the speed of reinvention, together with intensity and diversity of reinvention efforts required, means that you have to take it as its own stream of work. Just like before, IT or marketing or sales were not really fully dedicated professions. Operations at some point emerged in the 60s and 70s. Now it's its own function, its own profession. And why? In this speed, why? Because in this speed, you cannot simultaneously manage the existing business, right? When you are starting, when you're working on reinventing your product portfolio, in some companies, it's not a product. In some companies, it's business model. In some companies, it's brand. In some companies, it's culture or governance or platform or supply chain. When you are working on the new version of your company or your business, somebody still needs to manage the old. It doesn't disappear. It doesn't just go and fall off the face of the earth. So the existing group of executives, the current chief executive officer, together with chief operations officer and other officers in the company, other functions in the company. It doesn't need to be just the executive. They have a responsibility to keep the existing model working, the existing production working, the existing business producing results, but they cannot combine it with the new. It's no longer possible to just reinvent on the weekend or as an additional task, as KPI number 27. Currently, with the speed of intensity of reinvention required to survive and thrive, we have to make reinvention somebody's main priority. And that's the birth of the profession of reinvention. So I'm happy to see how many chief reinvention officers emerged in the past few years. Many of them, of course, graduated from our Reinvention Academy. If you are a chief reinvention officer, and if you have a title or not, it doesn't matter, but you can have some adjunct title. You're a chief transformation officer, but essentially, this is your job. Give me a plus and a comment. Whether you are a consultant delivering reinvention services, or you are an internal reinvention professional, or you are a teacher, a trainer in reinvention, or in your small and medium-sized business, like in my own, your role, you carry the role of chief reinvention officer. Give me a plus in the comments. I want to celebrate you. I want to congratulate you. In our network, we literally are moving towards 100 chief reinvention officers already in just the last couple of years. This is a rapidly evolving profession. I see Beth is carrying that responsibility. This is her profession. I see Victor in Brazil having that responsibility. This is Victor's profession. I see Michael in Germany carrying that responsibility, offering reinvention professional services. As you can see, this is becoming a quite wide profession. So then the question is, if this is a profession, what in the heck does this profession do? Here we have to come back to the diversity of reinvention initiatives required for them to be successful. And of course, we have to come back to the idea that it's all moving away from project-based idea of reinvention towards a product-based idea of reinvention. When we talk about very slow speed of change, when the companies used to reinvent every 30, 40, 50 years, reinvention absolutely was right to be treated as a project, So in that sense, if we reinvent only once every 30 years, 40 years, why would you make it more than just a project? You treat it as a project, the way you treat, for example, a wedding. It's a big bang event that happens once in a blue moon, that we hire a wedding planner, a reinvention consultant or external person, a McKinsey or whoever else to work with us. It's something that we all push and treat very, very much, really intensify all the efforts for a short period of time with a definitive deadline, and then we are done. This is the idea of reinvention as a project. Reinvention as a project. At that point, there was no profession of reinvention. The only professions that were dealing with reinvention was strategy consultants. And later in the 90s and early 2000s, they were also complemented and worked together with change management consultants. Now, what's happening now, reinvention is no longer a project. It cannot be treated as a project. When we have to reinvent every 2-3 years or less, 60% of companies that we survey reinvent every 3 years or less, very high speed of change. Suddenly, reinvention cannot be treated as a project. It has to be treated as a process. And it has to be something that is managed as a system. That process, just like a manufacturing process, like a budgeting process, like a well thought out supply chain management process, it needs a custodian, a person who takes care of it and it needs continuous reinvention. You have to reinvent your own reinvention process on a regular basis. You have to have renewal built in. And that's what the profession is dedicated to build the process that is right for the specific industry and the specific company or organization you're working in, even a state or community that you're working in, to build a process and a system that is tailor-made for your specific content, and then to manage that system so that it produces results. So this is the essential move that demanded reinvention as a profession. This jump from project to process became so important. And this jump is the reason why there's such a demand for reinvention professionals, because there's not that many places that know how to create renewal as a predictable, thought out, and result-oriented process. Not sporadic project, not something that we push and pull, but it's not a wedding anymore. It's more like taking a shower. If I don't take a shower on a regular basis, I begin to stink. Same with our companies. If our company's business models, internal processes, products, markets, partnerships don't take a shower on a regular basis, they begin to stink. And shower is a regular process. You don't invent your morning shower every time. You don't treat it as this, oh my God, project that nobody knows, never done from the beginning. We need owners and we need to figure out everything from scratch. No, hopefully you know where the water turns on. Hopefully you will learn how to wash yourself when you were a child. Hopefully you have the supplies, the towels, to the soap, the shampoo, the water already, and it's all aligned for the moment that you need to take a shower. Hopefully it's a well-oiled machine for you. You are not every day inventing your shower, even though that probably would be fun. Same here. Reinvention is no longer a project. It's not this big initiative that we unveil and unfreeze and then refreeze, talking the change management language. No. It's no longer a project. It's a regular, thought out, proactive process. Proactive process. And why does it need to be proactive? It needs to be proactive for one simple reason. There's wonderful research that I keep repeating again and again, and most companies still refuse to look the data in the eye. And that piece of data, it's a wonderful book called Stall Points. If you haven't read that book, I highly recommend it. It's all about studying why companies stall their growth. If you don't want to read the whole book, there's a Harvard Business Review article on why do you need to reinvent before it's too late. Why? What the research showed that if you start reinventing on the decline, if you start reinventing on decline, the chances of you ever going back to your peak performance are only 10%. That's it, only 10%. If you start reinventing on the decline, the budgets are already tight. The fear has already set in. The political will is not often there to make the difficult decisions. So it's pretty much downhill. Only 10% of companies are able to reinvent on a decline and come back to their peak of historical performance. That means we need to reinvent proactively. 90% chance of success is on this side of the cycle before we hit the problem, before we hit the decline, before we hit the loss. And that means we need to build a process that essentially makes reinvention a proactive effort, where we reinvent ahead of the next disruption, ahead of the crisis, ahead of the next technological innovation, ahead of the next regulation, ahead of the next competitor. We don't know what disruption is coming our way. It might be COVID-19. It might be a new regulation. It might be a new competitor. It might be a new boss. It might be just a new CEO will be your disruption. It doesn't matter. What is the source of disruption? The process of managing the disruption and thriving in an uncertainty is about the same. The research is very conclusive. It's like a musical instrument. Just like you can play rock music and pop music and classic music on the same piano. Same with a well done reinvention process. You can play with any disruption using the same set of tools. It's an issue that somebody should build that process using scientifically validated methods and the tools designed specifically for uncertainty and volatility. I hope this answers your question on what reinvention as a profession is and what the role is in the company. Can you give me a sign in the comments, maybe yes, maybe a plus, that this actually makes sense to you, that we are making sense on why the case for having a reinvention professionals in-house or in close proximity in the form of consultants, trainers, and coaches, if this makes sense to you. I see some yeses, I see some emojis, I see some enthusiastic responses. I'm happy to see that. Does it need to be called reinvention? In most cases, not. I tend to advocate to choose the language that is custom made for the culture of your company and your industry. So we usually find the language that is best fit to be useful, effective, and generative, not to stir up the pot for no reason. So I see many of you are reacting on the proactive game. Many of you are seeing that this makes a lot of sense. And I see that especially the move from project to process, just like any other process, the moment that move happens, we no longer can treat that area of our life as a hobby. It needs to be professionalized. We need to become better. We need to develop skill set. We need to update our tool set. And of course, we need to update our mindset. There is no reinventing the business models until the mental models are reinvented. So this is, of course, the birth of the profession is predicated on this specific move. And Leo is asking on the role, predict and adapt and reinvent. We actually define 9 different types of reinvention. Some of them are closer to just adaptation. And if you are interested in that, in the Chief Reinvention Officer Handbook, if you're using that, it is on page 180. You will see the canvas, 9 different types of reinvention. So yes, sometimes it's adapt, sometimes it's more radical innovation needed. We need a portfolio point of view. We need a diverse portfolio of efforts, of streams of work, in a very diverse way that allows you to reinvent at the right time, proactively, and using the mix between adaptive, a more incremental type of reinvention, and more radical ecosystem level innovations and everything in between. So I hope that answers your question. Now, in the links, you will see a chance to download the 85 pages of this handbook. It's not just one chapter, it's tons of other things. You will see 2 tools, you will get some data, you will get a case. So grab that link, download the 85-page preview of this book absolutely free. And of course, many of you are already asking me for the Reinvention details. Robert, thank you for this question. Drop me your Reinvention Academy details. Absolutely. We actually have our own certified reinvention practitioner program coming up in a couple of weeks. And we have 2 cohorts every year in English that we take in, and our fall 2021 cohort is just about to close the doors for enrollment for this year, with the program starting on October 19th, and the last day to enroll is October 18th. Certified Reinvention Practitioner program is actually a unique mix. It's a certificate, a professional certificate that gives you lifetime license to use our entire methodology and every tool with it. No additional fees, nothing required, nothing necessary. We do bring you updates via alumni reunions, but they are absolutely free. So there is a theoretical piece and the academic credential, but most importantly, there is also a practice. This is the accelerator part of the program, where you are working on your real life project, reinventing something in your own business for your clients, in your corporations, in your nonprofit, and we help you on your way. So not only theory, but very importantly, practice. There is a link in the comments. My team just gave you a link to that program. We're happy to answer any questions about that program. And if you want to chat personally, you can always write me a DM, and I'm happy to record an audio or video for you, or even find a way to connect. But hopefully, today's topic made sense to you. This is very interactive topic today for me. Very, very interactive. So for those of you who are checking out, you can look at for the details in the comments. You will find the details like this. But the most important thing for me is, because of the speed of change and the intensity of change, we no longer can treat reinvention as a project. We have to build a system, a proactive system for safeguarding, increasing and protecting the level of life in your products, in your company, in your nonprofit, in your career. And for that, reinvention must become a profession. In time, it's my deep belief that reinvention will become just a basic literacy skill. Just like 100 years ago, reading, writing, and counting was something that everyone needed to be successful in the 20th century. I truly believe that reinvention is one of the literacy skills of the 21st century. But today, just like you can have basic skills in mathematics, but also you can become a professor of math, or you can become an engineer and use math more heavily. Same with reinvention. There's a baseline reinvention skills, but there's also few of us who see this as our professional path. And I hope this ignites some curiosity on your side, that you are seeing a potential, that this could be a skill for you as well. And as Leo's saying, there's absolutely no reason why this cannot be used in personal life. I have a 17-year-old daughter, and I've been working with her on her reinvention skills for a decade now, over a decade for sure. I believe that if she wants to be successful in this century, the century of disruption, the century of volatility, the century in which she is predicted to have 5 careers, not 5 jobs, 5 careers. Careers means you were a dentist and became a social media manager. 5 careers in which you will have a lot of jobs. When she's living in a world that is expected to face massive level of continuous sustained disruption and volatility and uncertainty we haven't seen for a while, I want her to be equipped. So absolutely, reinvention is becoming a personal skill, just like emotional intelligence became a personal skill that makes it or breaks it for you in business in the 90s and early 2000s. This is where we are heading. And I'm super excited to see that you're investing in this skill set, in this mindset, and in this tool set already today. With that, let me know what topics you want me to cover in the future reinvention shows. We have some exciting lineup for you coming up in the next few weeks with guests, including authors, executives, consultants, and of course, I'm happy to hop on some shows myself and give you some latest data, new tools, new visuals. As you can see, I love writing, I love having a conversation. So give me in the comments your feedback, your questions, and your topics. I would love to build the show around your needs. Let me know what I can cover in the next shows. Give me a sign, grab a copy of the handbook. It's a free 85-page preview. And those of you who are interested in the Certified Reinvention Practitioner program, write me a personal message. I am happy to see you there. Thank you for your positive comments. Thank you for your cheers. And with that, I'll see you next Thursday. Bye, everyone. Have an amazing